Prove that waterboarding worked. Here's Cheney on Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
He did not cooperate fully in terms of interrogations until after waterboarding. Once we went through that process, he produced vast quantities of invaluable information about al-Qaeda.
President Obama has a different take.
What I've said, and I will repeat, is that waterboarding violates our ideals and our values. I do believe that it is torture. We could have gotten this information in other ways, in ways that were consistent with our values, in ways that were consistent with who we are.
So who is right? Bob Baer is a former CIA case officer and Time.com's intelligence columnist. Frank Gaffney is the president of the Center for Security Policy and served as Assistant Defense Secretary. Bob, to you first. Is there unequivocal evidence that torture does not work?
No, nobody knows that for certain. I mean, but generally speaking, our experience in the intelligence community, it doesn't work. My first experience was the torture to death of my boss in Beirut, Bill Buckley. Later on, we obtained his so-called confession, which said nothing at all. And ever since then, I've been sort of a student of torture. But I generally find it's regimes that intend to intimidate that use torture, but not to collect good intelligence.
Frank, how do we know that some alternative method might not have worked in the case that Dick Cheney was pointing out to?
Well, I don't think we do know. I'm pretty sure the President of the United States doesn't know. I think he's asserting it, and he's entitled to assert it. But what I don't think is in dispute, at least if these memos that have been described by not only Dick Cheney but members of Congress say what we are told they say, is that the techniques that were used, which I don't believe constitute torture, did in fact extract information from hardened al-Qaeda operatives who had resisted other means. Now, for the president to say, oh, we could have gotten it in another manner is entirely speculative. Who knows how long it would have taken if it would have worked at all, but I certainly don't think he has a specific idea in mind, a technique in mind that would have gotten this information, particularly in the way and at the time we needed it.
Well, Frank, if you're right, and if Vice President Cheney is right, why then did waterboarding have to be done over 100 times in a couple of these instances?
Well, I guess it just shows how hardened these guys are and how much it must not constitute torture. I think that it's an unpleasant technique. It certainly doesn't have lasting effects, and in that sense, I think it doesn't rise to the standard that everybody, including this network, incessantly says it does.
Bob Baer?
I think it's torture, but I think the real point is we should stop making this so partisan, and I agree with the former vice president. We should declassify this information taken from Abu Ghraib to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, find out if they really did prevent lives, then we can get on with the moral argument. In all fairness to the last administration, they were presented with a dilemma. They said we can either use these techniques, whether you call them torture or enhanced interrogation, or we're going to suffer another 9/11. That was the case presented to them. We know what they chose. But now let's see what we got out of it. Otherwise, this debate will go on forever and ever until there's the next attack.
Well, and on that point, on CBS's Face the Nation, Bob Schieffer pressed Dick Cheney about whether using torture weakens our security because it makes a mockery of what we tell the rest of the world. Watch.
You'd have to say that in effect, we're prepared to sacrifice American lives rather than run an intelligent interrogation program that would provide us the information we need to protect America.
Frank, if it's okay to protect American lives, say in a U.S. city, by torturing somebody, isn't it then okay? Shouldn't we encourage our soldiers who develop information in Iraq about something that may be around the corner to go ahead and torture Iraqis to try to prevent the loss of 4 or 5 soldiers? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Well, look, I think what we're going to confront at some point down the road is another terrible attack. I believe this president will want to be able to use every technique available to us.
My point is that there are terrible attacks all the time in Iraq. And the point is, if this works, why not say to soldiers, go ahead, torture Iraqis that you find in order to get information about where the next IED is. That's the point. Why is a soldier's life worth less than the life of an American here at home?
Look, I'm as worried about the lives of American soldiers as I am people here at home. I think, in fact, this whole debate is simply putting in jeopardy, as will these new photos that the president intends to unveil on Memorial Day, no less, are going to put American soldiers' lives at risk. I'm not calling it torture. You persist in saying that. I don't think that we should engage in torture. I think our soldiers should use techniques that are available to them under the Army Field Manual to get information. And if there's a very high-value target, I suspect that they will wind up having to go to higher authority for permission to do more intensive interrogations, and maybe Barack Obama will tell them what that secret technique that he knows about that's consistent with our value will be. I hope it's there, and I hope it works. But if it doesn't, and real threat of loss of life is happening, I suspect we're going to have to use some of the techniques that he's now said are impermissible. That'll be terribly regrettable.
Bob Baer, you've actually been in the field, and that situation we talk about Iraq happens all the time, and one you're familiar with. What is the most effective way, whether it's that situation or a situation here at home where you've got somebody who you think has crucial information that could save lives? How do you get it out of them?
I hate to do this, but I defer to the FBI, good old police work. Regular police interrogations that have worked over and over for the FBI. The FBI has stated categorically, Bob Mueller, that torture doesn't work. So let's go with the classical techniques, because they do work. And this ticking bomb scenario is so rare that it's not even worth discussing. It never happens.
We better hope it stays rare. I'm not sure that that can be predicted from here on out. And Bob, I know on one point we agree. There are people in this world, including our friends in Saudi Arabia, who are determined to destroy us, and I don't think they're going to be dissuaded from wanting to do that by whether we use waterboarding on some of their illegal combatants in the future or not.
On the issue of the photographs, you mentioned that the Obama administration is preparing to release up to 2,000 photographs showing some of the, I guess, the prisoners and the techniques that were used and what was going on. Liz Cheney today, Frank, said that President Obama, in doing this, is siding with terrorists. Do you agree with that?
Look, whatever he's thinking about, I think what he is, as a practical matter, doing is emboldening terrorists. He will be adding to the recruitment of terrorists that he says he doesn't want to have recruited. I can't for the life of me figure out, these are not, by the way, these have no bearing, as I understand it, on the kinds of intensive techniques that we've been talking about. These are more of the kind of spectacles that we saw out of Abu Ghraib by these kids, you know, getting their jollies off. That is irresponsible, and it will, in fact, intensify the danger, I think, not only to our soldiers overseas, but to our people here at home. And I just think the president should rethink this immediately rather than press ahead, especially in a way that is so much of an affront to our American servicemen and women who we are memorializing on the very weekend he proposes to release these thousands of photographs. It's despicable.
Bob Baer, is it despicable and an affront to release these photographs, or is it more despicable and an affront to our soldiers not to release them?
I think the more clarity we have on this issue, the better. I don't know about the timing, but we've got to discuss this in the open. It can't be done in the secret. Trust
Bob,
me.
come on. Thousands of additional photographs showing people in unpleasant positions. I honestly don't think this is going to add one iota to the clarity that we have from the thousands of photographs, or hundreds, however many it's been, of photographs before. This will
Frank,
simply aggravate
I'll concede that one for you. No, I'll concede that. That's just, it's not a good idea, because we have enough problems in the Middle East, just going to add to them. I agree with Frank on this one.
I agree.
Bob Baer and Frank Gaffney, thank you both. It'll be so interesting to see what happens. We appreciate you coming in today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.